Question 1. Stakeholder feedback indicates a potential candidate for admission possesses significant extracurricular achievements and a compelling personal narrative, but their academic scores fall slightly below the minimum threshold stipulated in the AKS University Satna's official admission prospectus for the upcoming academic year. The candidate's family has also expressed a strong willingness to contribute a substantial donation to the university's development fund. The university is facing a budget deficit. How should the admissions committee proceed? Option A. Reject the candidate outright based solely on their academic scores not meeting the minimum threshold, without considering any other factors or potential exceptions outlined in university policy. Option B. Admit the candidate immediately due to their compelling personal story and the potential for a significant donation, as this would help alleviate the university's budget deficit. Option C. Evaluate the candidate's application holistically, considering their extracurricular achievements and personal narrative alongside their academic scores, and consult the established policy for exceptional cases within the AKS University Satna admission framework before making a decision, ensuring any potential donation is handled separately and ethically according to university financial guidelines. Option D. Offer the candidate a place in a lower-tier program that has less stringent academic requirements, regardless of their stated program of interest, to secure their admission and potential donation. Correct answer is C. Evaluate the candidate's application holistically, considering their extracurricular achievements and personal narrative alongside their academic scores, and consult the established policy for exceptional cases within the AKS University Satna admission framework before making a decision, ensuring any potential donation is handled separately and ethically according to university financial guidelines. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate needs of the university with the long-term implications of its academic integrity and reputation. The decision-maker must navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure adherence to the AKS University Satna's established admission policies and ethical guidelines. A robust decision-making framework is crucial to avoid arbitrary choices and maintain fairness. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the existing admission policy, consultation with relevant academic and administrative bodies within AKS University Satna, and a transparent evaluation of the student's qualifications against established criteria. This ensures that any decision is grounded in the university's own regulatory framework and promotes consistent application of its rules. This approach upholds the principles of fairness, transparency, and academic rigor, which are fundamental to the university's operational integrity and its standing within the educational landscape. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate financial gain without due diligence risks compromising the university's academic standards. This could lead to admitting underqualified students, potentially impacting the quality of education and the reputation of AKS University Satna. Furthermore, bypassing established admission procedures or making exceptions without proper justification can create a precedent for future irregularities, undermining the credibility of the entire admission process. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on the student's personal circumstances without considering the university's admission criteria fails to uphold the principle of equal opportunity and fair treatment for all applicants. While empathy is important, decisions must be made within the established policy framework to ensure that the admission process is objective and equitable. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with clearly identifying the core issue and the relevant university policies and guidelines. This should be followed by gathering all necessary information, consulting with appropriate stakeholders, e.g., admissions committee, faculty deans, and evaluating potential courses of action against established criteria and ethical principles. Finally, the decision should be documented and its rationale clearly communicated to ensure transparency and accountability. Question 2. The assessment process reveals an applicant for the B. Tech program at AKS University Satna has met the minimum academic eligibility criteria, but scored slightly below the typical cutoff for the previous year's intake. The admissions committee is considering the applicant's application. According to the AKS University Satna entrance exam regulatory framework and admission guidelines, which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Grant admission to the applicant due to a personal recommendation from a senior faculty member who knows the applicant's family. Option B. Adjust the applicant's entrance exam score to align with the previous year's cutoff to ensure fairness. Option C. Consider the applicant's potential for future success, even if their current entrance exam score is below the established threshold. Option D. Evaluate the applicant strictly based on the published admission criteria and the current year's merit list, irrespective of previous year's cutoffs. The correct answer is D. Evaluate the applicant strictly based on the published admission criteria and the current year's merit list, irrespective of previous year's cutoffs. Explanation: the assessment process reveals a common challenge in university entrance exams, ensuring fairness and integrity while adhering to established admission policies. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's need to select qualified candidates with the ethical obligation to treat all applicants equitably and transparently, as per AKS University Satna's established admission guidelines. Misinterpreting or deviating from these guidelines can lead to accusations of bias, legal challenges, and damage to the university's reputation. Careful judgment is required to uphold the spirit and letter of the regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's profile against the published admission criteria for the chosen program at AKS University Satna. This approach is right because it directly aligns with the regulatory framework governing university admissions, which mandates adherence to stated eligibility requirements and selection processes. AKS University Satna's entrance exam guidelines likely emphasize merit-based selection and equal opportunity. By strictly following these published criteria, the admissions committee ensures that decisions are objective, defensible, and consistent with the university's commitment to fair admission practices. This upholds the integrity of the examination process and builds trust among applicants. An incorrect approach that prioritizes a candidate's perceived potential over documented eligibility fails to adhere to the established regulatory framework. This is ethically unacceptable as it introduces subjectivity and potential bias, undermining the principle of equal opportunity. Such a deviation from published criteria can lead to unfair advantages for some applicants and disadvantages for others, violating the spirit of a merit-based selection process. Another incorrect approach that involves making an exception based on a personal acquaintance with the applicant's family is a clear violation of ethical conduct and potentially university policy. This introduces a conflict of interest and demonstrates favoritism, which is antithetical to fair and transparent admissions. It erodes the credibility of the entire admission process and can lead to serious repercussions, including disciplinary action. A further incorrect approach that involves altering the applicant's score to meet a threshold, even with good intentions, is a direct contravention of the examination's integrity and regulatory compliance. This constitutes academic dishonesty and manipulation of data, which is a severe ethical breach. It undermines the validity of the assessment and can have long-term negative consequences for both the applicant and the institution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of the AKS University Satna entrance exam regulations and admission policies. When faced with ambiguity or a borderline case, the professional should consult the official documentation and, if necessary, seek clarification from the designated university authorities or admissions committee. The decision must be based on objective criteria and be fully justifiable according to the established rules. Transparency and documentation of the decision-making process are crucial to ensure accountability and maintain the integrity of the admissions process. Question 3. The risk matrix shows a moderate probability of a question paper security breach during the AKS University Satna entrance exam, with a high impact on the fairness of the selection process. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework and guidelines for AKS University Satna's entrance exam? Option A. Implementing enhanced physical security measures for question paper storage and transportation, and conducting thorough checks of all personnel involved in handling the papers. Option B. Delegating the responsibility for question paper security to a third-party vendor without a detailed review of their security protocols. Option C. Focusing on post-exam analysis to detect anomalies rather than investing in pre-exam preventative security measures. Option D. Relying on the existing security protocols, assuming the probability is only moderate and the cost of additional measures is prohibitive. The correct answer is A. implementing enhanced physical security measures for question paper storage and transportation, and conducting thorough checks of all personnel involved in handling the papers. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an understanding of how to interpret and act upon risk assessments within the specific context of AKS University Satna's entrance exam regulations. The challenge lies in moving beyond a superficial understanding of a risk matrix to applying its insights ethically and effectively to ensure a fair and transparent examination process, adhering strictly to AKS University Satna's established guidelines. The correct approach involves prioritizing the identification and mitigation of risks that could compromise the integrity of the entrance exam, as outlined by AKS University Satna's examination board. This means focusing on potential breaches of examination conduct, ensuring question paper security, and maintaining a fair evaluation environment. The regulatory framework for AKS University Satna's entrance exam mandates a commitment to academic integrity and fairness. Therefore, any action taken must align with these principles, prioritizing measures that uphold these standards above all else. This approach is ethically sound as it safeguards the interests of all candidates and the reputation of the university. An incorrect approach would be to focus solely on logistical convenience or cost-saving measures without adequately addressing the identified risks to exam integrity. For instance, overlooking a high-probability, high-impact risk related to potential cheating simply because implementing a mitigation strategy is expensive or time-consuming would be a failure to adhere to the university's commitment to a fair examination. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss risks that appear minor in isolation, but could collectively undermine the examination's credibility. The regulatory framework of AKS University Satna's entrance exam implicitly requires a proactive and comprehensive approach to risk management, not a reactive or selective one. Failing to address all significant risks, regardless of perceived inconvenience, violates the spirit and letter of fair examination practices. Professionals should approach such situations by first thoroughly understanding the specific regulatory framework and guidelines of AKS University Satna for its entrance exams. This involves familiarizing oneself with the university's policies on academic integrity, examination conduct, and risk management. When presented with a risk matrix, the decision-making process should involve systematically evaluating each identified risk against these established guidelines. The priority should always be to implement mitigation strategies that best protect the integrity and fairness of the examination process, ensuring that all candidates are evaluated equitably and that the university standards are upheld. Question 4. The performance metrics show a significant shortfall in the university's operational budget for the upcoming academic year, necessitating urgent fundraising. A potential corporate sponsor has offered a substantial donation, but their business practices have raised some ethical concerns in the past, and the terms of the donation are not entirely transparent regarding their intended use beyond general university support. The university administration is under pressure to accept the offer quickly to avoid impacting student services. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for AKS University Satna? Option A. Negotiate a revised donation agreement that clearly outlines the sponsor's intended use of the funds and clarifies any ambiguities, while still prioritizing a swift resolution. Option B. Accept the donation immediately to address the urgent budget shortfall and address any potential issues with the sponsor after the funds have been secured. Option C. Conduct a thorough due diligence investigation into the sponsor's ethical standing and the specific implications of the donation, consulting relevant university policies and Indian higher education regulations before making a decision. Option D. Seek an alternative, smaller donation from a less scrutinized source to avoid the complexities associated with the current offer. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough due diligence investigation into the sponsor's ethical standing and the specific implications of the donation, consulting relevant university policies and Indian higher education regulations before making a decision. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's immediate financial needs with its long-term academic integrity and reputation. The pressure to secure funding can lead to overlooking potential ethical or regulatory breaches. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision aligns with the AKS University Satna's established policies and relevant educational regulations in India. The correct approach involves a thorough due diligence process, prioritizing transparency and adherence to AKS University Satna's internal financial guidelines and any applicable regulations from the University Grants Commission, UC, or other relevant Indian higher education authorities. This approach ensures that the partnership is not only financially beneficial, but also ethically sound and compliant, safeguarding the university's reputation and academic standards. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate financial gain without adequate scrutiny risks violating principles of good governance and potentially contravening UGC guidelines on institutional partnerships or financial probity. This could lead to reputational damage, regulatory penalties, and a compromise of academic quality. Another incorrect approach that involves circumventing established university approval processes, even with good intentions, undermines institutional control and accountability. This can create a precedent for future noncompliance and expose the university to unforeseen risks. A further incorrect approach that involves accepting funding from sources with questionable ethical standing or unclear origins can lead to conflicts of interest and damage the university's public image. This is particularly relevant under Indian higher education regulations that emphasize transparency and ethical conduct in all university operations. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that includes 1. Understanding the objective, clearly define the need for funding and the desired outcomes. 2. Identifying stakeholders, consider the interests of students, faculty, administration, and the wider community. 3. Assessing risks and benefits, evaluate the financial advantages against potential ethical, reputational, and regulatory risks. 4. Consulting relevant policies and regulations, refer to AKS University Satna's financial policies, ethical codes, and any applicable UGC or Indian government guidelines. 5. Seeking expert advice, consult with legal, financial, and academic experts within or outside the university. 6. Evaluating alternatives, explore different funding options and partnership models. 7. Making a reasoned decision, choose the option that best balances financial needs with ethical and regulatory compliance. 8. Documenting the process, maintain clear records of the decision-making process and the rationale behind the final choice. Question 5. Benchmark analysis indicates that AKS University Satna's endowment fund is underperforming relative to its peers, prompting a review of its investment strategy. The university faces immediate pressure to increase funding for several critical research initiatives. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for immediate funding with prudent long-term financial stewardship, considering AKS University Satna's internal financial policies and relevant Indian educational regulatory guidelines? Option A. Aggressively reallocate a significant portion of the endowment to high-growth, high-risk emerging market equities to generate rapid returns that can fund current initiatives. Option B. Liquidate a substantial portion of the endowment to cover the immediate funding gap for research initiatives, deferring any long-term investment strategy until the immediate financial pressure is alleviated. Option C. Invest the entire endowment in a single, low-risk government bond to ensure capital preservation, accepting that this will likely result in minimal growth and insufficient funds for current research initiatives. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the current portfolio, identify areas of underperformance, and propose a diversified investment strategy that balances moderate risk with potential for steady, long-term growth, while exploring alternative funding sources for immediate research needs. The correct answer is A. Aggressively reallocate a significant portion of the endowment to high-growth, high-risk emerging market equities to generate rapid returns that can fund current initiatives. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term implications of its investment strategy. The decision-maker must balance the urgency of funding current projects with the fiduciary duty to preserve and grow the university's endowment for future generations. This requires a nuanced understanding of risk tolerance, investment horizons, and the regulatory environment governing educational institutions' financial management. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that considers the potential impact of various investment strategies on the university's financial stability and its ability to meet its mission. This includes evaluating market volatility, liquidity needs, and the ethical implications of investing in certain sectors. Adhering to the AKS University Satna's internal financial policies and any applicable regulations from the University Grants Commission, UG, or other relevant Indian educational authorities is paramount. These regulations often mandate prudent investment practices, diversification, and a focus on long-term sustainability. A thorough risk assessment ensures that investment decisions are not only financially sound, but also ethically responsible and compliant with governing frameworks. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize short-term gains without adequately considering the downside risks. For example, investing heavily in highly speculative assets solely to generate immediate returns would be a failure to exercise due diligence and prudence. This could violate the spirit of responsible financial stewardship expected of educational institutions and potentially contravene UGC guidelines on investment of endowment funds, which typically emphasize capital preservation and steady growth. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the university's stated risk tolerance or investment policy in favor of a more aggressive strategy driven by external market trends. This demonstrates a lack of adherence to internal governance and a disregard for the established framework for managing university assets, potentially leading to significant financial losses and reputational damage. Professionals tasked with such decisions should employ a structured risk management framework. This involves identifying potential risks, assessing their likelihood and impact, developing mitigation strategies, and regularly monitoring the investment portfolio. Crucially, all decisions must be grounded in the specific regulatory and ethical guidelines applicable to AKS University Satna, ensuring transparency, accountability, and alignment with the institution's long-term objectives. Question 6. The control framework reveals that a prominent local politician has contacted the admissions office, strongly advocating for the admission of a particular candidate who does not fully meet the published academic cutoff scores for the AKS University Satna entrance exam. The admissions committee is tasked with deciding whether to grant this candidate an interview, despite their academic profile falling below the standard threshold. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's application, assessing their overall profile against the published admission criteria and documenting the decision-making process, regardless of the politician's influence. Option B. Schedule an interview for the candidate, focusing the discussion on areas where they might compensate for lower academic scores, effectively creating an ad hoc evaluation. Option C. Inform the politician that the candidate does not meet the minimum requirements and close the matter without further consideration. Option D. Grant the candidate an interview and special consideration based on the politician's recommendation, with a note in the file indicating the external advocacy. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's application, assessing their overall profile against the published admission criteria and documenting the decision-making process, regardless of the politician's influence. Explanation. The control framework reveals a potential conflict between the university's established admission policies and the pressure exerted by a local influential figure. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the admissions committee to uphold institutional integrity and fairness while navigating external pressure that could impact the university's reputation and relationships. Careful judgment is required to balance adherence to policy with the practical realities of stakeholder influence. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's qualifications against the published admission criteria and a transparent, documented decision-making process. This upholds the principle of meritocracy and ensures that all applicants are evaluated consistently, as mandated by the AKS University Satna's commitment to fair and equitable admissions. Adhering strictly to the established criteria, regardless of external influence, is ethically sound and aligns with the university's regulatory obligations to maintain academic standards and transparency in its processes. An incorrect approach that prioritizes the influential figure's recommendation over the applicant's qualifications would be professionally unacceptable. This bypasses the established control framework and undermines the integrity of the admissions process, potentially leading to the admission of underqualified candidates. Such an action would violate the ethical duty to ensure fair treatment for all applicants and could expose the university to accusations of favoritism and a lack of transparency. thereby contravening the spirit of the AKS University Satna's entrance exam regulations. Another incorrect approach, which is to grant a special interview or consideration without a clear, documented rationale tied to the applicant's merit or specific circumstances outlined in the policy, also presents a failure. While seemingly less direct than outright admission based on influence, it creates an appearance of impropriety and deviates from the standardized evaluation process. This can erode trust in the admission system and set a precedent for future undue influence. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Clearly identifying the conflict between policy and external pressure. 2. Consulting the relevant university policies and admission guidelines. 3. Documenting all communications and considerations related to the applicant and the external influence. 4. Making a decision based solely on the established admission criteria, with a clear, written justification for the outcome. 5. If necessary, escalating the matter to higher authorities within the university for guidance or decision-making to ensure adherence to policy and ethical standards. Question 7. Strategic planning requires the AKS University Satna administration to consider a significant donation offer from a corporation with a history of environmental noncompliance and labor disputes. The donation is substantial and could fund a much-needed new research facility. What is the most ethically sound and strategically prudent course of action for the university? Option A. Accept the donation immediately to secure the funds for the research facility, assuming the corporation's past issues are not directly relevant to academic research and can be managed through public relations efforts. Option B. Reject the donation outright due to the corporation's negative reputation, prioritizing the avoidance of any potential association with unethical practices, even if it means delaying the development of the research facility. Option C. Accept the donation, but stipulate that the funds can only be used for administrative purposes, not for research, to distance the university from the donor's problematic activities. Option D. Accept the donation after conducting a thorough due diligence process to understand the full extent of the corporation's issues and establishing clear conditions for the donation that align with the university's ethical standards and mission. The correct answer is D. Accept the donation after conducting a thorough due diligence process to understand the full extent of the corporation's issues and establishing clear conditions for the donation that align with the university's ethical standards and mission. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's immediate financial needs with its long-term academic integrity and ethical obligations to its students and faculty. The pressure to secure funding can lead to compromises that undermine the core values of higher education. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing interests ethically and in accordance with the regulatory framework governing AKS University Satna. The correct approach involves prioritizing the university's mission and ethical standards over short-term financial gains. This means conducting thorough due diligence on potential donors, ensuring their values align with the university's, and maintaining transparency in all financial dealings. Specifically, this approach aligns with the ethical principles of academic integrity and responsible stewardship of university resources, which are implicitly or explicitly guided by the overarching regulations and guidelines for educational institutions in India, including those applicable to AKS University Satna. The focus is on sustainable growth and reputation, rather than immediate, potentially compromising, financial infusions. An incorrect approach that involves accepting funding from a source with questionable ethical practices, even if it offers significant financial benefits, represents a failure to uphold academic integrity and a breach of fiduciary duty. This could lead to reputational damage, loss of public trust, and potential regulatory scrutiny for violating ethical guidelines for educational institutions. Another incorrect approach, which is to reject all external funding due to a fear of ethical compromise, fails to acknowledge the practical realities of university operations and development. Caution is necessary. An outright rejection of all potential partnerships can hinder the university's ability to invest in its infrastructure, faculty, and student programs, ultimately impacting its ability to fulfill its educational mission. This approach lacks strategic foresight and a balanced perspective. A third incorrect approach, which is to accept funding without proper vetting and then attempt to conceal the source or its implications, is a direct violation of transparency and ethical conduct. This not only erodes trust, but also opens the university to severe penalties and legal repercussions under the governing regulations for educational institutions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-stakeholder consultation, including the university administration, faculty representatives, and potentially an ethics committee. A clear framework for evaluating potential donors and partnerships based on ethical considerations, alignment with the university's mission, and regulatory compliance should be established and consistently applied. Risk assessment and mitigation strategies should be integral to this process. Question 8. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential candidate for the AKS University Satna entrance exam has submitted an application that is largely compliant but contains a minor, undocumented deviation in one of the supporting documents. The admissions committee is aware of the candidate's strong academic background and potential contribution to the university. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee to ensure adherence to the AKS University Satna entrance exam's regulatory framework? Option A. Expedite the admission process by overlooking the minor documentation issue to accommodate the candidate's strong profile and potential. Option B. Reject the candidate outright due to the noncompliance with the documentation requirements as specified in the entrance exam guidelines. Option C. Evaluate the candidate based on their overall strong profile, considering the minor deviation as negligible given their potential. Option D. Seek clarification from the candidate regarding the deviation and consult the official AKS University Satna entrance exam admission guidelines for a definitive procedure on handling such discrepancies before making a decision. The correct answer is C. Evaluate the candidate based on their overall strong profile, considering the minor deviation as negligible given their potential. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to provide a fair and transparent admissions process. The admissions committee faces pressure to admit promising candidates while adhering strictly to the AKS University Satna entrance exam's established guidelines. Misinterpreting or deviating from these guidelines, even with good intentions, can lead to accusations of bias, unfairness, and a breach of regulatory compliance, potentially impacting the university's reputation and the validity of its admissions decisions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the candidate's application against the explicit criteria outlined in the AKS University Satna entrance exam's official prospectus and admission guidelines. This approach is right because it upholds the principle of equal opportunity by applying the same objective standards to all applicants. It ensures that decisions are based on merit and adherence to established rules, thereby maintaining the integrity of the entrance examination process as mandated by AKS University Satna's regulatory framework. This systematic and rule-bound method is the cornerstone of fair admissions. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes admitting a candidate based on a perceived future potential or a personal recommendation, without a clear basis in the stated admission criteria, is ethically flawed and violates the regulatory framework. This introduces subjectivity and potential bias, undermining the fairness of the entrance exam. It deviates from the established, objective standards, creating an uneven playing field for other applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook minor discrepancies in the application documentation due to time constraints or a desire to expedite the process. Failure to adhere to the documented requirements, as specified by the AKS University Satna entrance exam guidelines, can lead to admitting unqualified candidates or rejecting deserving ones based on arbitrary enforcement. It demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the established procedural integrity. Finally, an approach that involves creating new, unannounced criteria for evaluating the candidate on the spot, outside of the published admission guidelines, is also unacceptable. This circumvents the established regulatory framework and introduces an element of arbitrariness. It suggests that the published guidelines are not binding, which erodes trust in the admissions process and can lead to challenges based on procedural impropriety. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admissions must adopt a decision-making process rooted in transparency, fairness, and strict adherence to established rules and regulations. When faced with ambiguous situations or pressure, the primary recourse is always to consult the official documentation governing the process. In this case, The AKS University Satna entrance exams prospectus and admission guidelines. If clarification is needed, seeking guidance from the designated administrative or academic authorities responsible for overseeing the entrance examination is the appropriate step, rather than improvising or deviating from the established framework. Question 9. Governance review demonstrates that certain external stakeholders have exerted significant informal influence on key university decisions, potentially impacting academic policies and resource allocation. Which approach to assessing the impact of this influence best aligns with the principles of good governance and academic integrity for AKS University Satna? Option A. Dismiss the governance review's findings as minor procedural irregularities and proceed with existing operational procedures, assuming no significant negative impact on the university's core functions. Option B. Focus the impact assessment primarily on the financial contributions and reputational benefits derived from external stakeholder relationships, downplaying any potential negative effects on academic processes. Option C. Prioritize the immediate implementation of stricter external engagement protocols without a detailed impact assessment, focusing solely on preventing any further perceived interference, regardless of the nature or benefit of the external relationships. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that systematically evaluates the extent of external influence on academic standards, fairness of admissions, curriculum relevance, research integrity, and overall institutional autonomy, while identifying specific risks and proposing mitigation strategies aligned with national higher education regulations and ethical best practices. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that systematically evaluates the extent of external influence on academic standards, fairness of admissions, curriculum relevance, research integrity, and overall institutional autonomy, while identifying specific risks and proposing mitigation strategies aligned with national higher education regulations and ethical best practices. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the university's governance structure, as revealed by the review, appears to be susceptible to undue influence from external stakeholders, potentially compromising academic integrity and institutional autonomy. The need for a robust impact assessment arises from the imperative to understand the ramifications of such influence on various university functions, including admissions, curriculum development, and research. Careful judgment is required to identify and mitigate these risks without stifling legitimate external engagement. The correct approach involves a comprehensive and objective assessment of the governance review's findings, focusing on identifying potential conflicts of interest, deviations from established policies, and any adverse effects on academic standards or student welfare. This aligns with the principles of good governance and ethical conduct expected of educational institutions, ensuring transparency and accountability. Specifically, within the framework of AKS University Satna's operational guidelines and any relevant national higher education regulations, the university must prioritize its core mission of education and research. An impact assessment that systematically evaluates how external pressures might distort these objectives, leading to compromised quality or inequitable access, is paramount. This approach upholds the university's responsibility to its students, faculty, and the broader academic community by safeguarding its integrity. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the governance review's findings without thorough investigation, perhaps due to pressure from influential stakeholders or a desire to avoid controversy. This failure to acknowledge and address potential governance weaknesses creates a significant ethical and regulatory risk, as it allows detrimental practices to persist unchecked. Such inaction could violate principles of institutional accountability and potentially contravene any directives from regulatory bodies overseeing higher education in India, which typically mandate adherence to ethical standards and transparent governance. Another incorrect approach would be to conduct a superficial assessment that only considers the immediate financial or reputational benefits of external relationships, ignoring potential long-term negative consequences on academic quality or fairness. This narrow focus demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold the university's primary educational mandate. It prioritizes short-term gains over the sustained health and integrity of the institution, which is ethically unsound and likely to lead to future problems. A third incorrect approach would be to implement immediate, drastic policy changes based on incomplete information from the review without a proper impact assessment. This reactive measure could disrupt essential university operations, alienate stakeholders unnecessarily, and fail to address the root causes of the governance issues identified. It lacks the systematic, evidence-based approach required for effective governance reform and could lead to unintended negative consequences, undermining the very objectives of the review. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making process. This begins with a thorough understanding of the governance review's findings and their potential implications. Next, they must identify the relevant regulatory framework and ethical guidelines applicable to AKS University Satna. The core of the process involves designing and executing an impact assessment that is comprehensive, objective, and considers all relevant stakeholders and university functions. This assessment should inform subsequent actions, which must be proportionate, evidence-based, and aligned with the university's mission and regulatory obligations. Continuous monitoring and evaluation are also crucial to ensure the effectiveness of any implemented changes. Question 10. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a new online proctoring system for the AKS University Satna entrance exam could significantly reduce administrative overhead and potentially deter malpractice. But it requires all candidates to have reliable internet access and a compatible device, which may not be universally available among applicants from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. Which approach best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical considerations for the AKS University Satna entrance exam? Option A. Reject the new online proctoring system due to potential equity concerns and continue with the current examination procedures. Option B. Implement the new online proctoring system and offer financial assistance to candidates who lack the necessary internet access or devices. Option C. Propose a hybrid model that combines elements of the new online proctoring system with traditional in-person supervision for candidates who cannot meet the technical requirements. Option D. Implement the new online proctoring system, prioritizing cost savings and enhanced security, with a disclaimer about internet access requirements. The correct answer is D. Implement the new online proctoring system, prioritizing cost savings and enhanced security, with a disclaimer about internet access requirements. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate financial benefits of a process change against potential long-term risks and ethical considerations, all within the specific regulatory environment of AKS University Satna's entrance exam framework. The university's commitment to fair and transparent admissions, as implicitly governed by its entrance exam regulations, necessitates a cautious approach to any process optimization that could inadvertently create an unfair advantage or disadvantage. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity and fairness of the entrance examination process above all else. This means that even if a cost-benefit analysis suggests a particular optimization might save resources or improve efficiency, it must be rejected if it compromises the equitable treatment of all candidates or introduces any element of bias. The regulatory framework for AKS University Satna's entrance exam, while not explicitly detailed here, is understood to uphold principles of equal opportunity and merit-based selection. Therefore, any proposed change must be rigorously evaluated for its impact on these core principles. Adopting an approach that maintains the established fairness and transparency, even if it means foregoing immediate cost savings, aligns with the ethical duty to uphold the credibility of the examination and the university's admission standards. An incorrect approach would be to implement a process optimization solely based on the projected cost savings, without a thorough assessment of its impact on fairness and equity. This fails to acknowledge the implicit regulatory requirement for a level playing field for all applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to adopt a change that, while seemingly efficient, introduces a subtle bias favoring certain groups of students, perhaps those with prior exposure to a particular study methodology. This violates the ethical principle of non-discrimination and the regulatory expectation of impartial evaluation. A third incorrect approach would be to rush the implementation of a new process without adequate pilot testing or stakeholder consultation, risking unforeseen negative consequences on the examination's validity and reliability. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential disruption to the established examination system. Professionals tasked with optimizing processes within an academic entrance exam setting should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the overarching regulatory and ethical objectives. This involves identifying potential risks to fairness, transparency, and equity before considering any potential benefits. A robust evaluation process should include impact assessments on all candidate groups, consultation with relevant stakeholders, e.g., faculty, admissions committee, and a review against the specific guidelines of the AKS University Satna entrance exam. If any proposed optimization poses a threat to the integrity of the examination, it should be rejected or significantly modified, regardless of its perceived cost-saving potential. The ultimate goal is to enhance efficiency without compromising the fundamental principles of fair and equitable assessment. Question 11. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new automated essay scoring system for the AKS University Satna entrance exam could significantly reduce the costs associated with manual grading and speed up the results dissemination process. However, concerns have been raised about the system's ability to accurately capture nuanced arguments and creative thinking, which are key attributes sought by the university. Considering the primary objective of the AKS University Satna entrance exam is to fairly and accurately assess candidates' potential for academic success, which of the following approaches best aligns with the university's regulatory framework and ethical obligations? Option A. Implement the automated essay scoring system, provided it meets a minimum accuracy threshold for factual recall and grammar, accepting that some nuance may be lost to achieve cost and time efficiencies. Option B. Propose a hybrid system where the automated system provides an initial score, and human graders review only essays that fall within a specific score range, to balance efficiency with quality control. Option C. Reject the automated essay scoring system outright, as any potential loss of nuance in assessing candidates' potential for academic success is unacceptable, regardless of cost savings. Option D. Implement the automated essay scoring system for a pilot phase on a subset of applications, alongside manual grading, to rigorously validate its performance against human evaluators before a full-scale adoption decision. The correct answer is A. Implement the automated essay scoring system, provided it meets a minimum accuracy threshold for factual recall and grammar, accepting that some nuance may be lost to achieve cost and time efficiencies. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate financial benefits of a process change against potential long-term risks and ethical considerations, all within the specific regulatory context of AKS University Satna's entrance exam guidelines. The university's commitment to fairness and transparency in its admissions process is paramount, and any deviation must be carefully scrutinized. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity and fairness of the entrance exam process over short-term cost savings. This means that even if a new, less rigorous assessment method appears cheaper, it must be rejected if it compromises the ability to accurately evaluate candidates' suitability for AKS University Satna's programs. The regulatory framework for university entrance exams, as implicitly defined by the AKS University Satna entrance exam guidelines, mandates a robust and equitable evaluation system. Therefore, any proposed change must demonstrate that it upholds or enhances this standard, rather than diminishing it. The ethical obligation is to ensure all applicants are assessed on a level playing field, preventing any undue advantage or disadvantage due to the examination methodology. An incorrect approach would be to adopt a new assessment method solely based on its lower immediate cost, without adequately considering its impact on the validity and reliability of the entrance exam. This fails to meet the implicit regulatory requirement of maintaining a high standard of assessment. Ethically, this approach prioritizes financial expediency over the fairness owed to all applicants, potentially leading to the admission of less qualified students or the rejection of deserving ones. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a change that introduces bias, even if it is cost-effective. For instance, if a new method disproportionately favors candidates with certain backgrounds or prior exposure, it violates the principle of equal opportunity, a cornerstone of fair admissions. This would be a direct contravention of the spirit and likely the letter of any university's commitment to merit-based selection. A further incorrect approach would be to proceed with a change without proper consultation or validation, especially if it significantly alters the nature of the assessment. The AKS University Satna entrance exam guidelines likely imply a need for a well-established and validated assessment process. Implementing a novel, unproven method without due diligence risks undermining the credibility of the entire examination. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a comprehensive evaluation that extends beyond mere cost-benefit analysis. It requires a thorough understanding of the university's mission, the specific objectives of the entrance exam, and the relevant regulatory and ethical obligations. This includes assessing the validity, reliability, fairness, and potential biases of any proposed change. Stakeholder consultation, including academic departments and admissions committees, is crucial. Ultimately, the decision must align with the university's commitment to academic excellence and equitable opportunity for all prospective students. Question 12. Market research demonstrates that a significant number of applicants to the AKS University Satna entrance exam submit incomplete application forms, leading to delays in the admissions process. To expedite processing, the admissions committee is considering implementing a new automated system that flags incomplete applications for immediate rejection without further review, even if the missing information is minor. This approach aims to significantly reduce the workload on admissions staff. Option A. Develop and deploy a new, proprietary digital verification system for all submitted documents, bypassing the existing manual verification process to speed up candidate assessment. Option B. Prioritize the speed of initial application review by only superficially checking for the presence of all required fields, without deeply verifying the accuracy or completeness of the information provided within those fields. Option C. Introduce a grace period for applicants to submit missing documents after the initial deadline, allowing for a more lenient approach to incomplete applications before final decisions are made. Option D. Implement an automated system that flags incomplete applications for immediate rejection, ensuring strict adherence to the AKS University Satna entrance exam's stated submission requirements. The correct answer is D. Implement an automated system that flags incomplete applications for immediate rejection, ensuring strict adherence to the AKS University Satna entrance exam's stated submission requirements. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's desire for efficient admissions processing with the imperative to adhere strictly to the AKS University Satna entrance exam's established regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines. Any deviation, even if seemingly beneficial for speed, could lead to legal challenges, reputational damage, and a loss of trust in the integrity of the admissions process. The core of the challenge lies in understanding and applying the specific, and potentially unstated but implied, procedural requirements of the AKS University Satna entrance exam. The correct approach involves a thorough review and understanding of the AKS University Satna entrance exam's specific guidelines for process optimization. This means identifying areas where efficiency can be improved without compromising the fairness, transparency, and adherence to the prescribed admission criteria and procedures. For instance, if the guidelines permit digital submission of certain documents and automated initial screening based on predefined criteria, then implementing these would be compliant. The regulatory justification stems from the absolute priority of following the exam's framework. Any optimization must be demonstrably within the scope and spirit of these existing rules. Ethical considerations also demand fairness and equal opportunity, which are best preserved by a process that is both efficient and rigorously compliant with established, transparent procedures. An incorrect approach would be to implement a new, untested digital verification system without explicit approval or clear guidelines within the AKS University Satna entrance exam framework. This fails to adhere to the specified regulatory framework, as it introduces a process not sanctioned by the university's entrance exam rules. The ethical failure lies in potentially creating an unequal playing field if the new system has unforeseen biases or technical glitches that disadvantage certain applicants, thereby undermining fairness. Another incorrect approach would be to bypass the established document verification steps to speed up processing. This directly violates the procedural requirements of the AKS University Satna entrance exam, which are likely in place to ensure the authenticity of applicant information and qualifications. The regulatory failure is clear: non-compliance with established procedures. Ethically, This approach erodes the integrity of the admissions process and could lead to unqualified candidates being admitted, which is fundamentally unfair to those who meet the criteria through legitimate means. A third incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed over accuracy in the initial screening of applications, even if the existing guidelines allow for some flexibility. While efficiency is desired, the AKS University Satna entrance exams framework likely implies a certain standard of accuracy in initial assessments to ensure that only eligible candidates proceed. Sacrificing accuracy for speed, without explicit allowance in the guidelines, risks admitting candidates who do not meet the fundamental requirements, leading to regulatory and ethical breaches related to the integrity and fairness of the examination. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a comprehensive understanding of the governing regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines. This involves meticulous study of all official documents pertaining to the AKS University Satna entrance exam. Next, identify potential areas for improvement that align with the spirit and letter of these regulations. If any proposed optimization deviates from or is not explicitly covered by the existing framework, seek formal clarification or approval from the relevant university authorities responsible for the entrance exam. Prioritize compliance and fairness above all else, recognizing that efficiency gains are only valuable if they are achieved within the established legal and ethical boundaries. Question 13. Process analysis reveals that the current system for managing applications for the AKS University Satna entrance exam is experiencing significant delays, leading to a backlog of incomplete submissions and applicant inquiries. To address this, which of the following strategies would be most effective in optimizing the process while maintaining the integrity of admissions? Option A. Introducing a mandatory multi-stage verification process for every application, involving at least 3 different departmental reviews before acceptance. Option B. Focusing solely on expediting the final decision-making phase by prioritizing applications that have already passed through the existing, unexamined workflow. Option C. Hiring additional administrative staff to manually process the existing volume of paper applications at a faster pace. Option D. Implementing a phased digital transformation of the application submission and initial screening stages, coupled with enhanced communication protocols for applicant queries. The correct answer is D. Implementing a phased digital transformation of the application submission and initial screening stages, coupled with enhanced communication protocols for applicant queries. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in managing the admissions process for AKS University Satna entrance exam, specifically concerning the efficient and fair handling of applications. The challenge lies in balancing the need for speed and volume with the imperative to maintain accuracy and adherence to university guidelines. A hasty or disorganized approach can lead to errors, missed deadlines, and potential reputational damage for the university, while an overly bureaucratic process can deter genuine applicants. Careful judgment is required to implement a system that is both effective and compliant. The correct approach involves a systematic review and refinement of the existing application processing workflow. This entails identifying bottlenecks, redundancies, and areas prone to error, and then implementing targeted improvements. This might include digitizing forms, automating initial screening steps, establishing clear communication channels with applicants, and ensuring all data is validated against university admission criteria. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the identified inefficiencies and risks within the AKS University Satna entrance exams admission process. It aligns with the university's implicit goal of conducting a fair and efficient examination, ensuring that all eligible candidates have a smooth application experience. Furthermore, by focusing on process optimization, it upholds principles of good governance and administrative best practice, which are expected in any educational institution. An incorrect approach would be to simply increase the number of staff without analyzing the underlying process. This is incorrect because it fails to address the root causes of inefficiency. Adding more personnel to a flawed system often exacerbates problems, leading to increased costs without proportional improvements in speed or accuracy. It also risks inconsistent application of procedures if training is inadequate. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed above all else, leading to a rushed review of applications that might overlook crucial details or eligibility requirements. This is incorrect because it compromises the integrity of the admissions process. AKS University Satna entrance exam has specific criteria, and overlooking these due to haste can result in admitting unqualified candidates or rejecting eligible ones, leading to potential disputes and undermining the academic standards of the university. A third incorrect approach would be to implement a highly complex, multi-layered approval system for every single application, regardless of its initial assessment. This is incorrect because it introduces unnecessary delays and administrative burden. While checks and balances are important, an overly complex system can become a bottleneck, hindering the timely processing of applications and creating frustration for both applicants and administrative staff. It deviates from the principle of efficient resource allocation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a thorough understanding of the current process, including its inputs, outputs, activities, and decision points. This should be followed by identifying specific problems or areas for improvement. Then, potential solutions should be brainstormed, considering their feasibility, cost-effectiveness, and impact on all stakeholders. Finally, the chosen solution should be implemented, monitored, and evaluated for its effectiveness, with adjustments made as necessary. This iterative approach ensures continuous improvement and adherence to best practices. Question 14. Upon reviewing the initial risk assessment for the AKS University Satna entrance examination, it becomes apparent that certain demographic data points are missing, which are crucial for a comprehensive evaluation of potential biases in the selection process. What is the most appropriate course of action to obtain this missing information? Option A. Reach out to individual faculty members involved in the admissions committee to inquire about the demographic makeup of applicants. Option B. Proceed with the risk assessment using the available data, acknowledging the limitations due to the missing demographic information. Option C. Access the university student information system directly to extract the required demographic data without prior authorization. Option D. Formally request the missing demographic data from the AKS University Satna admissions office, referencing the need for it in the risk assessment. Correct answer is D. Formally request the missing demographic data from the AKS University Satna admissions office, referencing the need for it in the risk assessment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect sensitive data. The entrance exam context implies a need for fairness and integrity in the admissions process, making any breach of confidentiality particularly serious. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of information does not lead to a violation of privacy or institutional policy. The correct approach involves a structured and authorized process for obtaining necessary information. This typically entails consulting official university policies regarding data access and admissions procedures. If specific information is required for risk assessment, the appropriate channel would be to formally request it from the designated department or authority within AKS University Satna, adhering to established protocols. This upholds the principle of data privacy and ensures that any information accessed is done so legitimately and for a defined purpose, aligning with the ethical standards expected of university staff and the regulatory framework governing educational institutions in India, which emphasizes data protection and confidentiality. An incorrect approach would be to directly contact individuals involved in the admissions process without authorization to solicit information. This bypasses established procedures and could be construed as an attempt to gain privileged information through informal or unauthorized channels. Such an action risks violating the privacy of applicants and admissions staff, potentially leading to disciplinary action and undermining the integrity of the admissions process. It fails to respect the established governance structures of AKS University Satna and disregards the importance of due process in handling sensitive information. Another incorrect approach would be to make assumptions about the risks based on incomplete or anecdotal evidence without seeking official clarification or data. This can lead to flawed risk assessments and potentially unfair decisions regarding admissions. It demonstrates a lack of diligence and adherence to the principle of evidence-based decision-making, which is crucial in any professional assessment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying the information need and its purpose. 2. Consulting relevant institutional policies and procedures for data access and information gathering. 3. Determining the authorized channels for obtaining the required information. 4. Formally requesting information through the appropriate channels, respecting privacy and confidentiality. 5. Documenting the process and the information obtained. 6. Basing the risk assessment on verified and authorized information. Question 15. Market research demonstrates a significant opportunity for AKS University Satna to enhance its applicant pool by understanding the motivations and preferences of prospective students. However, the proposed research methodology involves direct engagement with individuals who are currently preparing for the upcoming entrance examination, potentially gathering insights into their study habits and perceived exam difficulties. What is the most appropriate approach to manage the risks associated with this market research initiative in the context of the AKS University Satna entrance exam? Option A. Prioritize securing the resources and insights from the market research immediately to gain a competitive advantage, assuming that any risks to the entrance exam process are minimal and manageable. Option B. Limit the market research to individuals who have already completed the entrance examination, thereby avoiding any direct interaction with current candidates and potential conflicts. Option C. Proceed with the market research as planned, focusing on the potential benefits of improved applicant engagement and address any ethical concerns that may arise retrospectively. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify potential conflicts of interest, data privacy concerns, and any possibility of the research influencing the fairness or integrity of the entrance examination process, and implement mitigation strategies accordingly. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify potential conflicts of interest, data privacy concerns, and any possibility of the research influencing the fairness or integrity of the entrance examination process, and implement mitigation strategies accordingly. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the potential for academic advancement and resource acquisition with the ethical and regulatory obligations to ensure fair and transparent processes. The AKS University Satna entrance exam framework, while not explicitly detailed here, would typically emphasize principles of meritocracy, equal opportunity, and the prevention of undue influence or bias in admissions and resource allocation. The core of the challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks that could compromise the integrity of these processes. The correct approach involves a proactive and systematic identification of potential risks associated with the proposed market research initiative. This includes considering how the research findings might inadvertently create an uneven playing field, how sensitive information might be handled, and whether the research itself could be perceived as influencing the entrance exam process. By focusing on risk assessment, the individual demonstrates a commitment to upholding the principles of fairness and integrity that are fundamental to any reputable academic institution's entrance examination procedures, aligning with the implicit regulatory framework of AKS University Satna, which would prioritize ethical conduct and procedural fairness. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the potential benefits of market research without considering its implications for the entrance exam process fails to acknowledge the inherent risks. This could lead to regulatory breaches if the research inadvertently provides an advantage to certain candidates or if it compromises the confidentiality of exam-related information. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate resource acquisition over a thorough risk evaluation overlooks the long-term reputational damage and potential disciplinary actions that could arise from a compromised entrance exam process. Finally, an approach that dismisses potential risks as minor or unlikely without a formal assessment demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the established ethical and regulatory standards expected within an academic setting. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making process. This involves first understanding the specific regulatory and ethical guidelines applicable to AKS University Satna. Then, they should identify all potential stakeholders and their interests. A comprehensive risk assessment should be conducted, categorizing risks by likelihood and impact. Mitigation strategies should be developed for identified risks, and these strategies should be reviewed and approved by relevant authorities within the university. Finally, continuous monitoring and evaluation of the implemented strategies are crucial to ensure ongoing compliance and integrity. Question 16. The risk matrix shows a significant potential for reputational damage and decreased student enrollment if the university proceeds with a proposed partnership that offers substantial immediate funding, but involves a curriculum not fully aligned with established academic standards. The university administration is considering this partnership to address immediate budgetary shortfalls, which approach best reflects the professional and ethical responsibilities of AKS University Satna in this situation. Option A. Accept the partnership immediately to secure the necessary funding, with a plan to address curriculum issues gradually over several years. Option B. Prioritize the long-term academic integrity and student welfare by seeking alternative funding sources or restructuring existing programs to meet budgetary needs, even if it means a slower financial recovery. Option C. Reject the partnership outright without further investigation into potential compromises that could satisfy both financial needs and academic standards. Option D. Proceed with the partnership and focus marketing efforts on the financial benefits to attract students, downplaying any concerns about curriculum alignment. The correct answer is B. Prioritize the long-term academic integrity and student welfare by seeking alternative funding sources or restructuring existing programs to meet budgetary needs, even if it means a slower financial recovery. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate financial interests of the university with the long-term implications of its academic reputation and the ethical obligations to its students and faculty. The risk matrix, a standard tool for assessing potential threats, highlights a critical juncture where a decision must be made that could have far-reaching consequences. The university administration must exercise careful judgment to navigate these competing priorities. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the academic programs and the welfare of the students and faculty. This means acknowledging the risks identified in the matrix, such as potential reputational damage, decreased enrollment, and loss of accreditation, and taking proactive steps to mitigate them. This aligns with the ethical principles of academic responsibility and the university's core mission to provide quality education. Specifically, within the regulatory framework of AKS University Satna, the emphasis would be on adhering to the guidelines set by the University Grants Commission, UC, and any internal academic council regulations that mandate maintaining academic standards and ensuring student success. The university has a duty of care to its stakeholders, and decisions must reflect this commitment. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on short-term financial gains, such as accepting a partnership that offers immediate funding but compromises academic quality or ethical standards. This would be a failure to uphold the university's core values and could lead to severe long-term consequences, including loss of accreditation, legal challenges, and irreparable damage to its reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore or downplay the risks identified in the matrix, assuming they are unlikely to materialize. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential harm to students and the institution. Such inaction would be a dereliction of the university's responsibility to manage its risks effectively and ethically. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the risks and their potential impact, as presented in the risk matrix. This should be followed by an assessment of how each potential decision aligns with the institution's mission, values, and regulatory obligations. Engaging relevant stakeholders, including faculty, students, and governing bodies, in the decision-making process is crucial for ensuring a balanced and informed outcome. Finally, the chosen course of action should be transparently communicated and consistently monitored for its effectiveness in mitigating risks and achieving desired outcomes. Question 17. Examination of the data shows a significant discrepancy in the projected revenue figures for a new research initiative, which could impact the attractiveness of the proposal to a potential donor. The donor's representative has expressed urgency in receiving the final proposal for review within the next 48 hours. Option A. Immediately halt the proposal submission and request an extension from the donor to thoroughly investigate and rectify the revenue projection discrepancies, ensuring all data is accurate and transparently presented. Option B. Adjust the revenue projections downwards to a more conservative, albeit potentially less impressive, figure without fully investigating the root cause of the initial discrepancy to meet the deadline. Option C. Proceed with presenting the proposal as is, assuming the donor will understand that projections are estimates and the core research is sound. Option D. Present the proposal with a note acknowledging potential minor variances in projections, but emphasize the overall strength of the research to expedite the process. Correct answer is C. Proceed with presenting the proposal as is, assuming the donor will understand that projections are estimates and the core research is sound. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and transparency. The pressure to secure funding can tempt individuals to overlook or downplay potential issues, creating a dilemma between short-term gains and long-term reputational damage and ethical breaches. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing interests. The correct approach involves a commitment to thorough due diligence and transparent reporting, even if it means delaying or jeopardizing the immediate funding. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty, integrity, and accountability expected of academic institutions and their representatives. Specifically, it adheres to the AKS University Satna's internal guidelines on financial transparency and ethical conduct, which mandate accurate representation of financial data and responsible stewardship of resources. By seeking clarification and ensuring all data is verified before presentation, the individual upholds the university's reputation and fosters trust with potential donors. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate funding by selectively presenting data or omitting critical details would constitute a breach of ethical conduct and potentially violate university policies on financial reporting. This misrepresentation erodes trust and can lead to severe consequences, including the withdrawal of funding and damage to the university's standing. Another incorrect approach, which involves proceeding with the presentation without addressing the discrepancies, demonstrates a lack of diligence and a failure to uphold professional responsibility. This passive stance allows potential ethical issues to fester and can be interpreted as tacit approval of misleading information. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a structured approach. First, identify the ethical conflict. Second, consult relevant university policies and ethical codes. Third, gather all necessary information and seek clarification on any ambiguities. Fourth, evaluate the potential consequences of each course of action. And finally, choose the option that upholds the highest ethical standards and regulatory compliance, even if it presents short-term challenges. Question 18. Assessment of the most effective process optimization strategy for handling AKS University Satna entrance exam applications, considering the need for both efficiency and data integrity, would involve: Option A. Expediting the entire application processing timeline by reducing the number of verification steps to a minimum. Option B. Focusing solely on the speed of initial data capture, deferring comprehensive verification to post-admission stages. Option C. Implementing a multi-stage verification process where key applicant data is cross-checked at critical junctures before final submission. Option D. Relying exclusively on automated data entry and processing without any manual review of critical applicant information. The correct answer is C. Implementing a multi-stage verification process where key applicant data is cross-checked at critical junctures before final submission. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge in managing university admissions data, specifically concerning the efficient and ethical processing of applications for AKS University Satna's entrance exam. The core professional challenge lies in balancing the need for timely processing with the imperative to maintain data integrity and adhere to university policies, which are implicitly governed by the AKS University Satna entrance exam framework. This requires a nuanced understanding of process optimization that prioritizes accuracy and compliance over mere speed. The correct approach involves implementing a phased verification system. This method ensures that each application undergoes a thorough check for completeness and accuracy at critical stages before moving to the next. This aligns with the implicit regulatory framework of AKS University Satna entrance exam by upholding the principles of fairness and transparency in the admission process. By systematically verifying details, the university minimizes the risk of errors that could lead to incorrect admissions decisions, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the examination and the university's reputation. This approach is ethically sound as it treats all applicants equitably by ensuring their applications are processed with due diligence. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed by bypassing intermediate verification steps. This could lead to a higher volume of applications being processed quickly, but significantly increases the risk of errors, such as incomplete applications being accepted or incorrect data being entered. Such a failure would violate the implicit regulatory framework of the AKS University Satna entrance exam by compromising the fairness and accuracy of the admissions process. Ethically, this approach is flawed as it could disadvantage applicants due to administrative oversights. Another incorrect approach would be to solely rely on automated data entry without human oversight for critical fields. While automation can improve efficiency, it can also introduce systemic errors if not properly validated. This would also contravene the implicit regulatory framework by potentially allowing inaccurate data to proceed, impacting the integrity of the entrance exam. Ethically, this approach fails to provide a robust system that ensures the accuracy of applicant information, which is a fundamental requirement for fair evaluation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment of each stage in the application processing workflow. Professionals must identify critical data points and verification requirements, aligning them with the overarching goals of the AKS University Satna entrance exam framework. This includes considering the potential impact of errors on applicants and the university. Implementing checks and balances, such as multi-stage verification and periodic audits, ensures that efficiency gains do not come at the cost of accuracy and compliance. Prioritizing a robust, albeit potentially slightly slower, process that guarantees data integrity and adherence to university guidelines is paramount. Question 19. Which approach would be most appropriate for the admissions committee at AKS University Satna when encountering discrepancies in applicant data that could impact timely reporting? Option A. Make reasonable assumptions to reconcile the discrepancies and proceed with the report to avoid any delay. Option B. Initiate a thorough verification process for all identified discrepancies, even if it means a slight delay in reporting, to ensure data accuracy. Option C. Immediately report the data as is, with a note to follow up on discrepancies later to meet the reporting deadline. Option D. Exclude the applicants with discrepancies from the current report and address their cases separately after verification. The correct answer is C. Immediately report the data as is, with a note to follow up on discrepancies later to meet the reporting deadline. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the university's need for timely admissions data with the ethical obligation to ensure the accuracy and integrity of that data, especially when dealing with potential discrepancies. Pressure to meet deadlines can tempt individuals to overlook or rush through verification processes, which could lead to incorrect reporting and potentially unfair admissions decisions. Careful judgment is required to uphold academic standards and fairness. The correct approach involves a systematic and thorough verification process, even if it introduces a slight delay. This aligns with the AKS University Satna's commitment to academic integrity and fair admission. University's internal guidelines and the broader principles of ethical data management mandate that all submitted information be validated before being finalized. This ensures that admissions decisions are based on accurate representations of applicants' qualifications and that the university's reputation for fairness is maintained. An approach that prioritizes speed over accuracy would fail to uphold the university's commitment to integrity. This could lead to admitting students based on falsified or incomplete information, undermining the academic standards of AKS University Satna. Furthermore, it could create a precedent for lax data handling, potentially leading to future compliance issues or reputational damage. An approach that involves making assumptions about the validity of the data without proper verification is also professionally unacceptable. This bypasses essential checks and balances designed to prevent errors and fraud. It demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the importance of accurate record keeping, which is a fundamental expectation in any academic institution. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Identifying the core conflict between speed and accuracy. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and ethical guidelines regarding data integrity and admissions. 3. Prioritizing accuracy and fairness, even if it means a minor delay, by implementing robust verification procedures. 4. Communicating any potential delays transparently to relevant stakeholders. explaining the necessity of thorough verification to maintain academic standards. Question 20. Implementation of a new admissions policy at AKS University Satna for the upcoming entrance exam requires the admissions committee to balance the university's strategic goal of increasing student intake by 15% with the existing regulatory framework that emphasizes merit-based selection and equal opportunity for all applicants. The committee is presented with a proposal to streamline the application review process by prioritizing candidates who have demonstrated strong extracurricular achievements, even if their academic scores are slightly below the established cutoff, to quickly fill a targeted number of seats. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee to ensure compliance with the AKS University Satna entrance exam's regulatory framework and ethical principles? Option A. Focus solely on meeting the 15% enrollment target by accepting a broader range of applicants, including those with significantly lower academic scores, to ensure all available seats are filled. Option B. Deviate from the established academic cutoff for a select group of candidates with exceptional extracurricular profiles to meet the 15% intake increase, justifying it as a holistic approach to student selection. Option C. Implement the proposed streamlined process, prioritizing candidates with strong extracurricular achievements to meet the enrollment target, while informally noting potential academic deficiencies for future review. Option D. Strictly adhere to the established academic merit-based criteria for all applicants, ensuring a fair and transparent selection process, and communicate any concerns about meeting enrollment targets to the administration through proper channels. The correct answer is D. Strictly adhere to the established academic merit-based criteria for all applicants, ensuring a fair and transparent selection process, and communicate any concerns about meeting enrollment targets to the administration through proper channels. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for resources and the ethical obligation to ensure the integrity of the admission process. The university administration's pressure to meet enrollment targets can create an environment where shortcuts are considered, potentially compromising fairness and meritocracy. Careful judgment is required to balance institutional goals with ethical responsibilities. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial review of all applications, adhering strictly to the established admission criteria and guidelines. This ensures that decisions are based on merit and qualifications, upholding the principles of fairness and equal opportunity for all prospective students. This aligns with the ethical framework of academic institutions, which prioritizes transparency, integrity, and the selection of candidates best suited for academic success. The AKS University Satna entrance exam regulations would mandate adherence to these principles, ensuring that the admission process is not influenced by external pressures or personal biases. An incorrect approach that prioritizes meeting enrollment targets by relaxing admission standards would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This would undermine the credibility of the university and the value of its degrees. It would also be unfair to applicants who have met the genuine requirements. Another incorrect approach, such as selectively admitting candidates based on non-academic factors or personal connections, directly violates the principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity, and would be a clear breach of the AKS University Satna entrance exam's regulatory framework, which is designed to ensure a fair and transparent selection process. Furthermore, any approach that involves fabricating or misrepresenting applicant data to meet targets would constitute fraud and a severe ethical violation. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and ethical guidelines. This involves 1. Understanding and internalizing the university's admission policies and the specific regulations governing the entrance exam. 2. Maintaining objectivity and impartiality in evaluating all applications. 3. Resisting undue pressure from administrative or external sources that might compromise the integrity of the process. 4. Seeking clarification or guidance from relevant authorities if faced with ambiguous situations or conflicting pressures. 5. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them to ensure accountability and transparency.